And welcome everyone to this month's online webcast. I apologize for being a couple minutes late. I had a little bit of technical difficulty, so I apologize. Anyways, I want to thank you all for joining me, especially those who are staying up late and joining me from around the world. And whatever time zone it is where you are, I really want to welcome you here. Okay, so I received tons of questions this week. I was kind of overwhelmed by questions, as I often am. I do my best to respond to all the questions that I can, but I just have a really small organization here, and so it's I can't always get to all of them. So the best way to get a hold of me and to go deeper into these questions, of course, is to meet with me in a Skype session. Where we can spend an hour really going deep into whatever it is that you're struggling with. And that's really what I offer is this invitation to go deeper, to meet in a deeper and fuller way. And so if you're interested in that, please send me an email and we'll find a time to meet. We will make it happen. So I could just jump right into the questions, but as always, my partner here always reminds me that I'm supposed to say that this satsang is supported by donations. There's a donation link on my YouTube page where you can support this. There's also a PayPal link on my website where you can offer a donation if you've found this helpful for you. So, the title of tonight's broadcast is Understanding Our Energy Body. And so this is quite an interesting topic for a lot of folks, because oftentimes the way we're taught spirituality is what I call a textbook approach. And in a textbook approach to spirituality, we're taught very basic Buddhism, very basic Hinduism, very basic yoga, very basic Christianity. And when you study a basic religion, you study the morals, you study the guidelines, you study the outward instructions on how to meditate, how to hold your body, how to do the breathing, that type of thing. But the thing that I offer is a much deeper approach to meditation. I was taught meditation from a master teacher. And this teacher, the first thing he taught me, I think I can remember, one of the first true instructions he gave me was about opening to the direct experience. The direct experience of what it's like to meditate, what it's like to commune with God, what it's like to experience energy and grace moving through your body, moving through your form. And so it's been a funny thing, because I've been on all kinds of different retreats with different teachers, I'll even say different levels of teacher. Sometimes it's funny, I'll go to a yoga class, or I'll go to a Tibetan Buddhist meditation retreat. I had a real funny experience once on a Tibetan Buddhist meditation retreat, and the teacher was talking for hours and hours about the form, about the approach, about holding your posture in a certain way. And of course that's great instruction, which this particular Lama was offering. But what I found was it lacked something quite important. There was no talk of the direct experience of what begins to happen once you've gotten the posture down, once you've memorized the sutras, once you've memorized the visualization or whatever it is that that teacher was teaching. And he spent hours and hours speaking about correct posture and doing it this certain way. People would ask, how should my spine be? And, where should I put my arms and my hands? And and this type of thing. And to me, it was all very funny. Yes, to me, it was just very simple. Like, what's the point here? The point is to directly experience ourselves as a living, breathing, alive, vibrant Buddha. You know, that's the whole point. And so to understand our energetic body, you know, if you know, I'd invite you, even just right now, if you close your eyes, begin to feel into your body. And just notice what's here. What's here beyond Craig's words? What's here beyond my thoughts? If we take, for example, just in our torso, you know, from your throat to your pelvic floor, what do you feel there? What do you experience there? Of course, besides, you know, the movements of digestion, the movement of your, you know, your heart pumping blood, what's there in your energy body? You know, you have your first chakra down there, your pelvic floor, your second chakra, or the heart right below the belly button, the third chakra, the solar plexus, fourth chakra, the heart, fifth chakra, the throat. What do you feel there in those different energy centers? Can you feel the light there? Can you feel the intelligence there? Can you feel a spaciousness in your being? You feel this fundamental brilliance and aliveness there. What is that? What is that thing? Well, this is what I refer to as the energy body. And of course, the energy body, it includes our entire body. Now there's chakras in our feet, in our knees. And sometimes these are referred to as lesser chakras. Chakras in our legs, and our thighs, and our arms, and our hands. Oh my God, if you even just hold your hands out like this, you may even feel just an energetic center in the palms of your hand, in your fingertips. So what is that thing? It's a mysterious thing. You know, if you're a scientist, you may say, well, that's nerves, and that's neurons moving and blood flowing and this and that. But what is it that makes the blood flow? And again, the scientist will say, well, that's the heart. Well, what is the heart? What makes it alive? What makes all the cells alive? So if you feel into this, we have this incredibly sophisticated system, this nervous system. But it's not just an animal nervous system. It's a divine nervous system. It's an extraordinary nervous system. And so I invite you to open up to this huge system with all this, you know, in Buddhism they call it all these different nadis, all these different little energy centers throughout our being. And there's, you know, some different schools of Buddhism, they say there's like 10 million nadis throughout your body. And so the invitation here is to become aware of all these different centers. To begin to open to them and to begin to identify with them in a way where you're taking them to be what you are, them to be what you know yourself to be. Instead of taking your thoughts to be what you know yourself to be, or your emotional mind and confusion to be what you know yourself to be. One of my Buddhist teachers, he says, the beautiful thing about the body is the body is already awake. It's awake all the time. You want to know what enlightenment is. If you want to know what freedom is, wake up in the body. And of course, the body that he's speaking about, it's not just this flesh and bones. It's this energetic nervous system, which I'm speaking of. And so what does it mean to wake up to this? And in a very practical way, when you're walking down the road, and you find yourself lost in thought, arguing with your husband or wife, you're creating a dream world, and you're living in a dream world that most people on the planet are living in. If you step out of that dream world and come into the beauty and the innocence of your heart, what's that like? Well, that's a whole nother world. That's a huge shift. And I don't mean just drop into your heart and feel how your heart feels. What if you fully unhooked from your mind and came into your heart and surrendered fully into it and knew yourself to be this supreme space of innocence, the supreme space of beauty, the supreme space of wonder? You have a radically different life. So what I'm speaking about, it's a huge thing. Earlier today, I was with some friends, and we were shooting some video. And one of the questions that came up for the video is, what's the difference between a spiritual experience and a true spiritual awakening? An experience is something that comes and goes. You come into your heart during yoga class, it feels kind of warm and fuzzy. And then afterwards, you're rushing to get home and fighting with someone in traffic. Those are experiences. You're having the experience of fighting with someone in traffic, you're having the experience of a warm, fuzzy feeling in your heart. Those are experiences that come and go. But a true spiritual awakening is when you wake up out of mind, wake up out of emotion, and you know yourself instead to be vast open spaciousness, vast freedom, incredible aliveness. And if you step into your body in that moment, you realize the aliveness in your body is the aliveness of the universe. That it's not separate from the universe. It's not separate from reality. That is, it is this completely undivided flow of intelligence, beauty, radiance, awareness. And it's a radical shift. It's a radically different way of being. I can't say that enough, how radical it is. It's so radical that when people first awaken to it, they're completely spellbound. You feel as if it's the first time you've ever been home. You finally made it home. It satisfies every single need that you could ever imagine. Feel overwhelmed with love and grace and bliss. That's a funny thing. I was listening to this teacher speak. It was a while ago. His big teaching was to step into reality, to not argue with anything, just to be with what is. But the way he was describing it in a very mental way. Where you step into just accepting what is. Now, I could have someone come into my office, and in a very psychological way, I could talk to them and say, well, just accept your wife. Accept that she's an alcoholic. Accept your children. Accept, that your teenage son hates you come to a place of acceptance with that. We could talk ourselves into a state of acceptance. You know, a friend of mine, he used to be a nurse at a hospital. He used to take care of old people, sick people, dying people. And he'd sometimes be changing people's diapers and, you know, do all this kinds of stuff with their, you know, trying to bathe them with a sponge. And he'd do some pretty gruesome things as a nurse. And, you know, he said to me in a very clear way, he said, Craig, you know, you can get used to anything. You can accept anything. It can become normal after a while. And so we have to be careful with this idea of just accepting anything. If we approach it from a mental way, it'll be just like how my friend was speaking about as a nurse. Like, hey, you can come to a place of just accepting anything. You can accept war from a place of your mind. But the spirituality that I'm speaking about, yes, it includes acceptance, but it is an acceptance that is grounded in the direct experience of our divinity. There's nothing cold or dead about it. It actually feels absolutely liberating, absolutely incredible. I was sitting with a friend the other day, and she was telling me about her experience of cancer. And although her body had been through pain and suffering, incredible heartache, it was almost being tortured by the cancer. What also I saw was this incredibly beautiful being, the bright light of her soul. I directly experienced her divinity, her beauty, her wonder. And so we have to be careful. A lot of the ways people teach non-duality, they teach it in this way that's not connected to the world of feeling. They can just get to themselves in some mental state and just work their way into a space of non-duality. And I would say that is absolutely not it. If you go that route, you miss the point fully. In fact, in Tibetan Buddhism, they have a term for that. It's almost called something like, and I don't know if I get it exactly, but it's like the sixth sense of the ego. In a sense, it's like having an ego awakening, where your ego can become so, how should I say this, so intellectually clear that we can create a space of awakening in our mind. And if you read enough non-dual books and you are fully disconnected from your body, which a lot of non-dual folks are, then you can get to this place where you fully understand the material. You can talk about it with great clarity. While you're speaking about it, you can experience the clarity of what you're speaking about. But your body is fully left behind. Your relationships are fully left behind. Or you're fully trying to avoid your relationships through non-duality, which is a nightmare. And so, when I'm speaking about opening up to the energetic body, it's a crucial part of my teaching. And so it's a willingness to fully inhabit your being, fully inhabit all your chakras, fully inhabit your feet, your knees, your pelvis, your thighs. And again, I don't necessarily mean the physical bodily form, but the energetic form. You know, in fact, I could even say this, and there's even been studies of this, where, you know, if a soldier, you know, is missing his or her leg or an arm, energetically, they still feel an arm there. They'll still feel a leg there. They'll still feel a presence of one. And they can literally continue to run energy down into those spaces, despite missing the physical form of the leg or the arm. It's quite amazing. You know that the body that I'm speaking about, it doesn't even require physicality. It includes physicality, but it doesn't require it. And so it's this willingness to be fully here in all of yourself and open to all the different worlds within yourself. Okay, so I'm just going to look at the questions because there's been so many this week. Okay, so a couple of them I've already answered about. Awakening happens in the body. And so, awakening, a lot of people think awakening happens in the mind or it happens outside of the mind, which is true. A transcendent awakening can happen outside of the mind where we wake up and out of our form. But the full awakening, it happens down and within the body, within the form. Doesn't need the body, but it includes the form. It happens in the spaciousness of the mind, the fullness and brilliance of the heart, the depth and the power of the gut. And it includes the Kundalini energy and the rising dynamic flow of divinity. And so this is all good to know, and I'll speak more about this. And so, one of the things that we can say is that the more willing you are to fully include all these different aspects of self, all the 7 major chakra centers, the more you're able to embody these centers, get to know these centers, fall in love with these centers, learn from the intelligence of these centers, the further and deeper your awakening will become, will manifest itself. Okay, moving along a little bit here. I'll just kind of paraphrase this. Craig, at your class, I experienced lots of energy in my body. Oftentimes it's frightening and very uncomfortable. Can you help me understand my experience? Yes, of course. And so this is a very confusing experience for a lot of people because oftentimes when people sit with me, whether it's my satsang here in Durango or online, oftentimes there's energies that begin to descend into the body, begin to ascend up from the floor. And this is a movement of grace. And grace comes in many different forms. Now, sometimes grace comes in a very light-hearted, heavenly, holy experience. It's peaceful, blissful, and just kind of wonderful. And that's really incredible. Sometimes it comes, these gentle movements in our heart. We'll feel an awakening of power in our belly. And sometimes the feelings feel as if they come from within us. I normally don't call that grace. I normally call that, that's different chakra centers waking up. Grace normally is a descent down or a descent up into us. Feels as if an energy is coming into us, a heavenly energy. But there's other times when we can experience a different type of grace. And the lineage that I come from, that I studied the most in, was the energy of Sri or the lineage of Sri Aurobindo. And within this lineage, oftentimes there are evolutionary energies, purifying energies. Sometimes it'll come with this descending heat, feelings that are burning within us, feelings of hot lava, like we're being cooked. Sometimes the energy become very raw and heavy. And these are evolutionary energies. They have their own intelligence. And so sometimes I'll be in a class, a teaching class, I'll look around the room, I'll notice different people are experiencing different things. I'll be looking out through my third eye and I can kind of see and feel into what people are feeling. And sometimes I'll see an individual have a look of just utter terror on their face. Because I'll see there's this really heavy, burning divine energy coming into them. And afterwards, they may be like, just want to get out of there. That Jesus is really weird or strange or heavy. Or maybe they think that they did something wrong. And so, you absolutely didn't do anything wrong. And what I can say is this world's an evolutionary world. Sometimes God will have an energy come into you. It's going to help evolve your soul, upgrade your nervous system. And one of the reasons why I was late tonight is because my computer was doing some sort of update. And it was getting things all straightened out within itself. And I can imagine it being a computer, and you kind of got everything under control. Your operating system's just fine. And then all of a sudden, there has to be an update. And the whole thing kind of goes haywire. It has, different parts of it have to be wiped clean, have to be let go of. And then there's this new kind of system that comes into it. Grace is very much the same way. And spiritual awakening is very much the same way. There's things we need to let go of in our old operating system, and there's new things that need to come down into us and move through us. And these things can be confusing, disorienting. Sometimes it can bring forth a lot of anxiety or chaos within ourselves until the energies get themselves straightened out again. For me, and what I always tell people is I grew up with having so many different spiritual experiences that I'm really comfortable with the energy coming into me. And for someone who's new to my teachings or new, walking into my satsang, they say, what the hell is this energy? This is weird. This hurts. It's uncomfortable. We have to remember these are the energies of God. These are the energies of grace. And the invitation here is that you open into these energies. You surrender to these energies. You trust in them. And now if I was some satanic cult leader, I would say, yeah, you don't want to trust in that guy, Craig. He's going to bring forth something crazy within you. Now keep in mind, we're opening our hearts to God. And so if God brings an uncomfortable energy within you, can you meet it with an open heart? With the curiosity. Can you let it do its work within you and see what happens? See what happens. And sometimes you'll get an answer within a day. Sometimes it takes a month. In my past, I've had energies within me, different graces that would come into me. It would take 2 years before I fully understand what it was. Before I fully saw its effect on me. It would show up every day in meditation, continually working on me, continually opening up a different world within myself. So this path is quite a rich path. It's not the path that they teach, normally at your local Buddhist Sangha. There's like the Buddhism that they offer to the public, but there's also this deeper Buddhism, these deeper wisdom traditions. It requires that we're willing to go deep and to learn from our own inner experience. And to let our experience teach us something new, something that's not written about. I often, when I look at Buddhism, it's like the Buddhism they teach at the hospital for stress management. That's one level of Buddhism. The Buddhism that they teach at your local Dharma center. But there's this deeper Buddhism, this deeper level of awakening. There's these deeper worlds available to us. If you're willing to study with a master, someone who's truly given their life to this inner divinity. And to me, that's what's always been attractive to me. And for me, it's also been something I've been quite spoiled in. I've always had great teachers. And it's funny because I grew up with, studying with these master teachers. And then I'd go, to a yoga class at the rec center, and they're trying to teach me about the meaning of Om. And inside I kind of chuckle a little bit because, yes, it's beautiful their understanding of what Om is, according to what they learned at their 200-hour yoga teacher training, and there was some truth in what they're saying, of course. It has a level of truth. But if you really feel into what Om is, that's the radiance of God. If you feel into yourself, you can find that Om right now. It's inner radiance. I remember when I discovered it within myself. One day I discovered just this high-pitched Om within my being. And at first it actually hurt because the sound of it was so intense, so pure. I took the time just to feel into it more and more and more. I realized that this energy, this vibration had been within this form my entire life. It had been vibrating within me my entire life. It's quite an extraordinary thing to discover. And then once I fully discovered it within myself, I began to look out at life and I began to notice, oh, this Om is actually in everything. In the Bible, in the beginning there was the Word, same thing. In Hinduism, in the beginning there was Om. This Om is everywhere. It's in everything. See, all these worlds are available to us if we're willing to open to them, to give ourselves fully to them. Okay. So moving right along here. And I get this question a couple times a week. I had an awakening about a year ago, or some period of time ago, and now I feel depressed and anxious. Can you help me understand what's going on with me? I'm going to blend this with another question. This is from Australia. Craig, are long months or periods of fatigue, depression common and inevitable with the clearing out process of light body integration? Does it come from ego body or something else? Okay, and then he had some more questions, but I'm just going to stick with that one to begin with. Yes, it is very common. It's very common for us to have a spiritual awakening, to wake up to this vast, supreme sense of spacious awareness. And then later on in the day, later on in the week, later on in the month, later on in the year, all the repressed energies within us begin to arise. They begin to come forward. And this is where most people make a mistake. It's not a huge mistake, but the anxious energies come forward and they identify with the anxious energies, align with them, and then find themselves reconfused again. And reconfused again, if that's a word. And so then they wonder, well, did I lose it? Did I screw it up? Did I mess up? Did I do something wrong? No, it happens to the best of us. That's how it happens to all of us. And basically what's going on is the light of your awareness. It's like this bright, brilliant light. And if you've ever been out at night before, say in the summertime, you look up at a street light, you see all these moths and bugs are just like fluttering all around the light. The same is true with our repressed energy within us. When we wake up to this vast, spacious brilliance, and at some point, all the repressed energy within us, because the lid has been taken off, because our ego's begun to dissolve. The ego, it actually works to repress all these psychological energies. When the lid's been taken off the ego, and we know ourselves as this brilliance, all those forces that the ego had been suppressing, the superego had been suppressing, they come forward to the light, the same way the moth goes towards the flame. Just like the moth going into the flame, sometimes the moth gets burnt up. And so that's why we have an experience of anxiety. Perhaps a childhood of pain or sadness or heartache. the difficulty of our teenage years, difficulty of our first marriage that fell apart, or our second marriage that fell apart, or the death, of a child. All these energies which weren't fully grieved, which weren't fully felt, they come forward to the light of our awareness to be healed. It's actually a good thing that that anxiety comes forward. It's the repressed pain of our past coming forward to be healed. All you have to do is meet it with love and spaciousness. And, that's not enough, and remain sane. And to remain sane, if you become overwhelmed with it, you should take the backward step into re-remembering, re-knowing, re-experiencing yourself as peace. And from this peace that you are, and noticing yourself as this peace, deeply knowing yourself as this peace, meeting the pain with love. And what you'll find is that's just a natural thing to do, is to meet your pain with love. Meet your anxiety with love, meet depression with love. And depression and fatigue, I can say, are two very difficult forces to work with. Because when depression and fatigue come forward, well, they have a tendency, if we identify with them, they have a tendency to wear us out, to put us back to sleep again. And so one of the things that depression and fatigue teach us is how strong we are, how clear we are. But it requires that you stand in your truth. You continue to know yourself as greater than depression, greater than fatigue. It invites us to continue to show up, try to work with our fatigue, or heal the depression, or heal what's underneath the fatigue. Without believing in fatigue. A very fine line there. Of knowing that fatigue is just an energy arising in my body. It's not the truth of me, even if it feels true, even if it feels as if it is the extent of my nature. Especially with depression too. Depression can be overwhelming for most folks. Okay. Also, this person asked me, I don't need to go into all the details here, but he said that he was diagnosed with Lyme disease, or there's a fear from friends and families that he may have Lyme disease. And again, it's a very interesting thing, because what I see with a lot of people, and Lyme disease, I get this one a lot, maybe once a month. And I have really good friends who've been diagnosed with it, and students who've been diagnosed with it. Lyme disease is a tricky one, because the symptoms of Lyme disease can often be fatigue, depression, malaise, these different weird kind of like mysterious states of consciousness. And so I've met a lot of people who they've had a spiritual awakening, and then they say, and I think I now have Lyme disease. And it's funny how many individuals I have worked with who've told me, I've had a spiritual experience and my doctor says I have Lyme disease. Almost as many as I had a spiritual experience and my psychiatrist has told me I am delusional and crazy, And the good thing is, the important thing here is to really trust in your own inner authority. To feel into yourself. To, is this true? Is this diagnosis true? I've even had students come to me and say they took one Lyme disease test, came back positive. And then they went on for a year thinking they had it. Took all kinds of harsh medications. And after the medications did nothing, they took a more thorough test, an expensive test that was, I think, maybe 10 times more expensive. It was like in the thousands of dollars. And this test said, oh yeah, no Lyme disease. And, I'd like to go back to those doctors and say, well, why did you flood their poor bodies with so much medication? And I think people are out searching the internet these days because they have a spiritual awakening and they open into this incredible world. And as the lid of their superego comes off, which is what happens during spiritual awakening, then all those forces come forward, repressed energies. And if you've had, real intense psychological pain and you've repressed it for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and even just 5 years, it can come forward in some strange mental states. You can have psychosomatic symptoms, symptoms that arise in your body. Just because you're having symptoms of Lyme disease doesn't mean it is Lyme disease. Now, of course, I have to say this, from more like a legal perspective. It's good to say trust your doctor, but I would get a second opinion, take all the tests you need to take, be very, very thorough in your testing. Know that not all tests that you receive at a doctor are completely accurate. Not all medications that they give you are actually good for you. A lot of times they don't even know what the medications do. I've heard psychiatrists say so many times, oh yeah, we give out this stuff called Ritalin. We don't know why it works. We know it does work. We're not even sure we know what it does. And to me, that's crazy. It's ludicrous to be prescribing people things that we don't even know what they are, or what it's doing, or what effect it has on the body. Keep in mind, when we're putting these medications in our body, we're adding a level of toxicity to both our physical body, but also our energetic nervous system. And that one day that toxicity will have to be cleared out as well. And so I'm not saying this to scare you, but like I said, it's strange how many individuals I've met with who didn't have Lyme disease and they had a spiritual awakening, and then all of a sudden they do have Lyme disease. It's been bizarre to me how many individuals. And then also how many individuals have come to me afterwards and said, oh yeah, it wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all. And through doing some deeper work with me or with some other teachers or healers or chiropractors, changing their diet or whatever it is, they were able to open their energy body, heal something that was stuck in a chakra system. And then the experience that they had of awakening that happened, say, many years ago, was able to fully re-inhabit their body and live through them in an integrated way, in a full way, in a vibrant way. And that's an amazing thing. I love working with people in this way. Sometimes it takes a couple of years for the healing to fully take place, or whatever it is they needed to let go to fully let go, for the karma to fully burn off. But it's beautiful to see when this thing happens. This type of thing happens. And in defense of Lyme disease, or in defense of sickness and mental illness and all these other types of things, is sometimes mental illness is real. Sometimes the Lyme disease is real. Sometimes we do have a sickness within our form that needs to clear out. I've had many sicknesses come forward in my form that had to clear out. Really bizarre sicknesses, strange energies. But to me, I always saw them as an energetic thing. When you really feel into any sickness, you can feel the energy of it, and even the intelligence of it, the lesson that it came to teach us. Through working with all the different layers of healing, even if it includes, using, let's just say politely, the chemicals of Western medicine to heal us. Sometimes there's a time and a place for that. That's appropriate. Sometimes there's a time and a place to see a chiropractor, a healer, to see me or see another teacher. There's a time and a place to work with all these different layers and levels of it. Okay. So I feel like I'm talking fast tonight just because I've had so many questions. One of the questions that I had is, and these are interesting questions, and of course I really paraphrase these down, but one of the questions is, what is anxiety and what is pain? Anxiety is energy moving through your body. Oftentimes it's repressed emotional energy, but sometimes it's spiritual energy. Because our ego doesn't know what it is fully, it just labels it anxiety. If you look closely at your experience, you'll find that anxiety is not anxiety. Anxiety is actually a brilliant light within you. And if you're having a panic attack and you just close your eyes and feel into the energy and see the energy with your inner eye, see, there's a brilliance there. It may be so brilliant it's uncomfortable with you. There may be so much of that energy that it's uncomfortable to you. Now, the same is true with pain. What is pain? Well, unless you hit your hand with a hammer and do what I do, I ran into a wall the other day, which was just hilarious to me, because I think it's got to be funny to be my wife, and my kids, because they look at their dad, they're just like, what is wrong with this guy? My wife looks at her husband, how could he run into a wall, But, sometimes I get so spacious, I lose track of where my body ends, where the walls begin. But if we look at an experience of pain, and I don't mean physical pain, like if you run into a wall or hit a hammer, and that's just nerves reacting. But so much pain we have. That's just stuck energy. It's energy that wants our attention as you open into it. And I say this a lot. The energy, it has an intelligence. It has a brilliance to it. It has a light to it. That's what I say. Pain has a light to it. All energy, all experiences are light. That includes pain. That includes fatigue. You ever lay down and feel into fatigue fully? Feel into depression fully? Depression oftentimes feels like a warm blanket has been pulled over you, or a heavy blanket. You feel into the heaviness of depression. Oh, there's this energy there. Very rich energy, heavy energy. That's similar to fatigue. If you listen to it in a deep way, you'll find there's a message there. It has something it wants to teach you or show you. I invite you to open to it. Most of the time, the way we look at our experience is pain, I want to fix it. I want to get rid of it. Fatigue, I want to fix it, get rid of it. Depression, I want to fix it, get rid of it. And sometimes life doesn't let us get away with that. We must learn what it is come to teach us first. And so I invite you just to look deeply at your experience and see what it is. See what it is. Well, this is a good one. I get this question a lot. Am I going crazy? And this one, I should probably give some context for this question. This question comes up a lot when people have had some kind of spiritual experience, or they're in the midst of having a spiritual experience. I can remember this as a kid. I'd be riding my bike down the road, and all of a sudden I'd feel like the whole world was opening up inside of me. And my mental energies as a kid would come forward and be like, what's going on? Am I going crazy? Like, what is this? What's this? What's going on within me? It's almost like, what happened to reality? Now, in a deep sense, in a soulful place, I knew I wasn't going crazy. But sometimes it would be fun just to say, like, oh, I'm going crazy. But what's happening is the ground, or the solidity, the perceived solidity that our mind creates. Because if you're in your mind long enough, Even if, say, for example, you're sitting down, you're doing your taxes, you're doing your accounting, you're creating this world, you're fabricating a reality. It seems solid, it seems real. It may seem tense and nervous and full of numbers and whatever it is in papers, and that this is the fullness of reality. But if you just step outside and go for a walk in nature, that reality can fall away quite quickly. When you get up and go for a walk in nature, you don't think, am I going crazy because I just lost all the thoughts I had about accounting and that world of accounting. No, you just actually go on a walk and enjoy it. Let's say, for example, you're like me when I was a little boy, riding down the road, and all of a sudden the world opens up, having an experience of oneness. The mind can feel like it's going crazy because the mind, it's losing its grip. By grip, I mean its ability to fabricate a solid world where there's not a solid world. There is nothing solid about this world. I can even say that as a rock climber, there's nothing solid about this world. I spend a lot of time, climbing on mountains. I've told this story before that my climbing buddy, he looked at me one day and he said, Craig, do you ever just look at the rocks and just feel like they're breathing? But yes, all the time. They are breathing because they are alive. Of course, if you crash your head on them, it's going to hurt and it's going to feel solid. But if you feel into the solidity of your mind, so-called solidity of your brain, there's no solidity there. Feel into the solidity of your hands, there's no solidity there. Feel into the solidity of your heart. It's this vibrant light, there's your heart. If you feel into a mountain, there's no solidity there. There's a feeling of depth, of power. A feeling of solidity. The feeling of solidity is actually different than this thing that we think is solid. Not sure if that makes sense, but I think maybe some of you understand what I'm speaking about. And so, when we wake up out of our mind, beyond our mind, and our mind begins to fall away, we step into this groundless space. We feel into that groundless space. We know ourselves to be groundless space. We know the world to be groundless space. If our mind arises and attempts to grasp at something, it may feel like it's going crazy because it will feel like it's grabbing and there's nothing there to hold on to. And it feels as if the ground is falling out from under you. From a psychological perspective, that feels like you're going crazy, like you're losing your mind. It's true, you are. But you're losing your mind in a good way. A good way. An open-hearted, spacious way. Okay. So, let's see here. Okay. Here's another question I have. This it's really long. I just got it before the webcast. Okay, so I'm just going to read some of it now and I'll respond. And this is from Reese. It says, Craig, I've been fluctuating between very profound, open, awake state and a rather hellish episode that go on for several days or more. When in the flow of this awake state, it's like true seeing, similar to the feeling of being a child or a baby. Other times I feel consumed by energetic, impersonal, emotional states that wreak havoc with the mind and nervous system. When in these latter states, I see that there's nothing I can do about them except endure them and trying to remain present. Meditation doesn't seem to alter these states, even if it provides some distance. Yet at certain points, spontaneously, the veil lifts. It's not some this whacked out state of consciousness. Thank you for that, Reese. It's empty. It's empty, awake presence. I'm really starting to see I'm not in control of anything. When these more hellish periods, the mind seems to be throwing all its punches to see what lands, and often seems caught up in a loop of thinking something is wrong and needs to be solved. When I'm in these more heavy states, I observe the mind trying to self-sabotage. I know it comes from a sense of unworthiness, which I've recognized and grieved about many times, but I just seem to have no choice about how long I'm on this merry-go-round. Okay, let me just see. Okay, do I really allow all the thoughts, even the most ugly, judgmental, compulsive, unworthy thoughts that the mind seems to conjure up only to frighten me? I'm not fighting them exactly, but it doesn't seem that I should give them the free license to exist either. Okay, so that's a great question, and like I said, I get these emails just all the time. So basically, the thing we want to do is we want to step back into this place of supreme innocence, of supreme sanity. And I will say, everyone on the planet knows this place of sanity, whether they're conscious of it or not. From this sanity, you will see and feel all these hellish states arise through you. The fact that you can identify them as hellish or blissful shows that there is a sanity beyond the hell or the bliss. An awareness that's beyond the hell or the bliss, or mundane states, or depressed states, or fatigue states, or Lyme disease, or not Lyme disease, or whatever it is. There's something beyond. And oftentimes people refer to this space beyond as the witness, but I don't like the witness because oftentimes the witness is confused with a mental egoic witness. The space I'm speaking about is the space of I am. The space of your supreme divine presence. And I say supreme divine presence because if you turn around and allow yourself to see yourself fully at any point, any moment of your life, you will discover this absolute divinity, absolute goodness. Beyond worthy, unworthy, hell, bliss, it's beyond all that. Oftentimes I refer to it as this great okayness. You step into this, and from this great okayness, sometimes you just rest there and you allow the states to move through you. And what I say is, you don't try to control the mind, you don't fight with the mind, but you also don't indulge the mind either. When I was young, I actually used to argue a lot with people. I used to argue with friends, with family. I would indulge the arguments. It created a lot of hell for me. I was probably a pain in the ass to some of my friends and family members, relationships I had been in, to argue some point. At this stage in my life, I couldn't imagine arguing in that way, defending in that way. And so yes, we don't indulge. You're going to find throughout your life different thought forms will come, different emotional states will come. Much of it is out of our control. But can we allow it to come and move through us? But allowing it doesn't mean we indulge it. Allowing it means we just don't repress it. We don't fight with it. We also don't ignore it. Some energies come through and they need to be felt. They need to be seen fully. They need to be heard fully. Especially energies that come in a cyclical format. They come again and again and again. And so if we have compulsive feelings of unworthiness or compulsive thoughts, I like to not listen to or indulge the surface level of the thought, but to feel deeper and see what's underneath these thoughts. What's underneath these emotions. My God, we have something like unworthiness. Well, unworthiness is basically our ego coming forward telling us, hey, you don't see yourself clearly. You don't know your divinity. If you know your divinity, you never feel unworthy. If unworthiness would have no purpose to arise in the person who knows their absolute goodness. Doesn't even make sense to have unworthiness arise. But if we are in ego, and then we are living as ego, which is a fundamentally insecure state of being, unworthiness is going to be a part of our experience. Or, whatever the opposite of unworthiness is, arrogance. Arrogance is just another form of unworthiness anyways, but so I encourage you to step backwards into your innocence. From innocence, you see pain come forward, you meet it with compassion, you meet it with love. And if it feels like you're trying to meet it with compassion, you're trying to meet it with love, you're doing that from your mind, from your ego. But when you're in your innocence, and painful emotional states come forward, you simply cry. You let them go. I can even say I cry all the time. I sit with someone and they're not feeling their pain, I cry for them. And then they begin to cry. It's a funny thing. So this idea of allowing thoughts to come or not allowing them, that's actually a game of the superego. Superego, it tries to guard all of our thoughts and only make us have really nice thoughts, pretty thoughts about unicorns and rainbows and puppies. But when you truly step back into the space of non-dual awareness, the space of your vast, loving heart, any thought is welcome to come forward. You don't engage it, you don't fight with it. If it's a twisted thought, a confused thought, a crazy thought, it's seen for what it is, and it just disappears into the spaciousness of your consciousness. It has a deep emotional root. You fearlessly and open-heartedly feel the pain of that emotion while simultaneously resting, your feet deeply planted, deeply rooted in the truth of your being. And then the emotion moves through you. You're not afraid of the emotion. You're not trying to push it away. You're not trying to ignore it. It's just coming forward. It's very much the job of the teacher to sit with pain. People think it's, all these people tell me they want to be a spiritual teacher. As a spiritual teacher, they sit with pain. Almost all day long, they sit with other people's pain. But my wife knows that because sometimes I tell her about my day. She says, "Why do you want to do this job?" So, well, this is just what I do. This is my life. I knew it from when I was a kid that this is what I'd be doing. It's not this part of me that likes to sit in pain, but there's a part of me that just does. But because I'm rooted in the truth of my nature, the pain doesn't knock me over, doesn't destroy my life. In a sense, I just meet it in a friendly way, the way you'd meet an old friend. By the way, I'm kind of cracking myself up tonight, but it becomes easy to meet sadness. It's easy to meet heartache. And it breaks your heart, but once your heart's been broken open, then there's just this love there. It's this love for life. I even say love for suffering. That sounds kind of crazy, but yeah, and so what happens with a lot of people is they wake up to this, like I said, this vast, spacious awareness. And then their mind comes forward, and their mind tries to do the awakening, tries to battle with the energies. It's continuing trying to control. And perhaps for the first time in your life, you're actually seeing what your mind has done for the last 20 years or 30 years or 60 years. Sometimes it's really painful to see that, to see your mind try so hard, see it fight so much, to see it try to micromanage everything. And so it could be painful for a period of time while you continue to identify with your mind and get lost in your mind, and yet you're hyper aware of it because you're at some level of some beginning stage of spiritual awakening. So it's confusing. But the more and more you give yourself over to this basic sanity, the more this energy and all these mind states will burn through you. And at some point you'll be left with this deep peace. And you'll rest in that deep peace, and you'll know that deep peace as yourself. And you'll continue to work with the various layers of your humanity. And then at some point you'll also begin to work with the layers of the collective consciousness, the layers of pain on this planet. And so, I'd encourage you to get comfortable with pain. Yes, you will get comfortable with peace and bliss and spaciousness and vastness and love, compassion. All that's easy to get comfortable with, but a disclaimer here is you better get comfortable with pain and become best friends with pain. And the further you walk down this path. Okay. I'm going to switch gears. I had a question from my good friend, one of my good friends in Canada. Okay, my dear. So she said this. She said, Craig, I struggle with some of your teachings that refer to our humanness, in particular, not eating meat and cleaning up the environment. I appreciate them. They push me to a place I need, but am resistant to go. So I haven't quite known what to do with them other than let them be and watch my resistance. Hope you and your family are healthy and well. Yeah, same to you, my dear. Hope everything's going well in your world. So these are funny questions. So in the last year, I began speaking a little bit more about veganism, about not eating meat, saving the planet, all these types of things. And it can come off in a little bit of a political way, but in no way do I want them to. This is just a movement of my heart. Many of the great teachers, if you look at Amachi or Thich Nhat Hanh, most of the great Hindu gurus and Buddhist teachers are vegans or vegetarians, and it's just a way of life. It's just a movement of their heart. If you feel aligned with it, if you resonate with it, then I encourage you to continue down that path. I want to be clear here, there's no judgment in it at all. I don't judge people who eat meat. My God, the majority of the world, the majority of the Western world eats meat. You go to a place like India, and 90% of the population is vegetarian. It just seems simple and it makes sense. It's much more low impact on the world, on the environment. Of course, I could come up with all kinds of arguments for it, but the reason I do it is simply out of love. Just because it's what my heart tells me to do. I never thought about it. It was just what arose out of my heart as a child. I just quit eating meat. And so please, if you find that this teaching that I have different than what resonates with your heart, if it brings up resistance, don't allow it to get in between me and you. Don't allow it to get in the way between us. That's just where my heart is. In my email that I wrote you, I said, well, in your heart, you may resonate with something different. There's so much all of us can do for our world, for the environment. Not eating meat is a very helpful thing. But it's not the only thing. My God. I have friends that work with the homeless. I have friends who, plant trees. Friends who, save animals from animal shelters. I rarely do these types of things. Occasionally I work with homeless youth, or occasionally I'll plant a tree here and there. There's so many things we can do. I encourage you to follow your truth and what's important for you and meaningful for you. Just because Amachi's a vegetarian doesn't mean you have to be one. Doesn't mean you're a bad person if you're not one. If you're not out crusading, saving the environment, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means you have a different focus. I don't know. I could go deep into it and say, oh yes, we all have a responsibility to do our part. And of course, there's a truth to it. We need to respect our mother. The way we are living in this world is out of control. It's depleting the resources of this planet and warming the whole thing up. It's melting the polar ice caps because of our very existence and the things that we do. We can all learn to live in greater harmony with this world. But if you're not a bleeding heart liberal, it doesn't mean that you're bad or wrong or a vegan. I laugh at my wife because she reads the ingredients on all the food we eat. I read them too, but she's, okay, Craig, you can't have soy lecithin in your organic chocolate, fair trade, candy bar that you eat. I say, well, geez, pretty soon I'm not going to be able to eat anything, sweetie. We joke about it because she likes to really look at all the little chemicals, that are in, say, vegan yogurt or bread or something. And she harasses me about the different chemicals that are going into my body and how they're made. And I just laugh. I don't feel any sense of judgment from her or whatever. Sometimes it's good for me to be conscious of, oh yeah, we should put that on the list. The continual, ever-evolving list of things we can no longer eat. But at some point it becomes silly. At some point you can't even breathe the air. So, but the big thing is again, if there's a teaching you don't like or something I speak about you don't like, or if I'm on the vegan platform or the Democratic platform or the Republican platform, it doesn't resonate with you, just put it on the back burner. It doesn't have to. Let it kind of just roll off your back like a duck. Allows water to roll off her back. Just, you don't need to worry about it. Now, if there is some deep resistance to it, and you want to look at that resistance, I'll be happy to meet with you around that. Or I would encourage you to look at that. Oftentimes when we find resistance in ourselves, we find there's something within us that's arguing with ourselves or judging ourselves or fighting with ourselves. I used to do this funny thing. It's kind of hilarious that many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I met some rock climbers. My first couple of days in Colorado. And I met these rock climbers, and they were such jerks. I thought, God, I don't want to rock climb. I don't want to be around people like that. And to be a rock climber, you have to have all this gear. You have to know how to tie all these knots. It can be a very, mental thing. And there, we have this word out west in Colorado. And we call these people, we call them turbo. And turbo, it's like these guys, they wear their Oakley sunglasses on the outside of their winter hat, and they like to wear spandex, ride their road bikes, and the turbo extreme sport, climbing gear kind of guys. And so I met a lot of these guys when I first came to Colorado, and I thought, I don't ever want to ride road bikes. These guys are a bunch of jackasses. I don't want to be around rock climbers. They're a bunch of jackasses. I held this idea in my mind. I kept saying it over and over again in my mind. I created this fight with these people. And then 15 years later, I find myself on a road bike and really enjoying it. I find myself, rock climbing and really enjoying it. But I had to let go of my ideas, my judgments, all my thoughts about this thing that these people were. I thought that they were all jerks. They're not all jerks. They actually had something to teach me. I was this incredibly relaxed, kind of hippie kind of guy, with long hair, coming off Grateful Dead tour. And I was resistant to them because they could be so specific. They had such an attention to detail. They were so clear about what their life was about. Even if it was about riding a bicycle, but I was resistant to their nature. But later on I found, well, that's actually something I needed within myself. It's something I needed to grow into, that attention to detail. And I hated it before because I was so loose, and I felt kind of like a contraction when I would get around people with such attention to detail. And my teacher, he spent a lot of time working with me with this having an attention to detail. And I always resisted him when he would talk to me about it. I said, no, I don't want to be that way. But there's a mastery in it, being conscious in that way. And so it's funny, at some point it took me a long time to embrace it. And when I did, I found myself much more balanced, much more happy within myself. And it's funny because I became much more happy in a world that I thought was much more contracted. But when I walked into it with an open heart and allowed them to teach me, I learned a lot of things about myself, and these other aspects of self were able to come forward. So I hope that last part wasn't confusing. I hope that made sense. But with anything, when we have resistance within ourselves, whether it's to politics, I found the same thing with Donald Trump. I hear him talk a little bit, and I just hate him. He's real authoritarian or whatever. And then a couple of weeks ago, I listened to him on a debate, and as crazy as it sounds, there's a lot of things he said that I love. I thought, oh, this is really great. A lot of things he said sound very similar to what Bernie Sanders says. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for Trump or vote for anyone else, but it's just interesting when we have a resistance. It's good to investigate the resistance. My initial resistance to Trump was he's an authoritarian, and I noticed for a long period of time I was afraid of authority, afraid of power. But as I opened up, to the idea of power, to the idea of authority, I stopped resisting, and I found, there's a lot here I can learn from. I Can I stand in my own power, my own autonomy? Can I be my own inner authority? And so oftentimes when we resist something, there's something there for us. Okay. So here's a great question. Someone sent me a long email. And of course, I made it a lot shorter, but I'll sum it up real quick. So this one is kind of about public humiliation and our ego and personal judgment of self. Okay. So this student wrote me a question. I do have a question. We touched upon this during one of our Skype sessions. Basically, he says, I've really got myself into a mess. In the past, I can regretfully admit that I lived in a very unwholesome way. That's very honest. So I want to commend you on being so honest. I can admit I've lived in very many unwholesome ways as well in the past. Because of this, publicly I've been seen and viewed as a threat to others. I don't know if threat's the right word, but that's the word I wrote. As a result of this, I judge myself very harshly. Okay, good. I know this experience. I've been seen as a threat to others in the past, I can say. I mean that in a lighthearted way, but there's been people in the past I've pissed off, that's for certain, and upset. And I grew up pretty much as a wild kid. I used to get in all kinds of trouble. I've definitely had the experience of being publicly judged, publicly humiliated. I've been called all kinds of things. Had groups of people hate me. I mean, I even live in a small town. There's different therapists that hate me and tell their clients that I worship Hindu gods, which is hilarious, and that I'm a heathen and this type of thing. I've even had Buddhists hate me because I'm not Buddhist enough. That's a good one. And an ex-wife hate me, and her friends have hated me. So I know this experience, and my heart goes out to you. And as a result, I judge myself very harshly. And I also know this experience of, because I grew up very much with an unworthiness complex, and then, coming into the world and say, whatever, I married a wife and she didn't like me at some point and was very public about her criticism of me. And, in here it goes on to say, the challenge is the outward environment reinforces my inner condition, really makes it difficult for me to heal. Can you help me? I'll say this is from Ben in the land down under. So anyways, yes, I know this experience. It's difficult. And so a lot of people know this experience of having an unworthiness complex. And then we grow up, we're human, we make many mistakes, and this is a common thing for us. To do things which we regret, and if we look back at our life honestly, we can see our life has been a life of growth. We made mistakes. And that's what happens when we grow. Sometimes we act like an idiot. Sometimes we act like an idiot as a kid, as a teenager, as an adult. I've made many mistakes. So from a place of humility, can we admit that we've made mistakes, like you did? But from a place of wisdom, can we see that that's normal? That's human. We don't have to judge ourselves. We don't have to attack ourselves. We can feel the pain and the sorrow of making those mistakes. And simultaneously, we can have a compassion for ourselves. Just admit, I'm human. I made those mistakes. The funny thing I've come to realize, if you really stand back and look at your life and look at your humanity is not yours. It was given to you. Your anger was given to you. Your foolishness was given to you. Your education was given to you. Your emotional reactions were given to you. And this is a fun one. Your lustful feelings were given to you. You didn't create lust. I didn't create lust. The fact that lust arises within us and sometimes we act on it, is that our fault? I often would call that's God's fault. God, you created this world. You created our animal nature. You created our addictive nature. You created our emotional nature. I'm not saying this so that we don't have to take any responsibility. I'm just saying this to offer a different perspective. That God created all these movements. If she wasn't okay with these movements, if these movements were really, bad or really wrong, if they were outside the hugeness of her vision, well, they wouldn't be possibilities. They wouldn't be present. God created an evolutionary world, and we are players in this world. So every divine thing we've done is because of God. Every terrible, violent, and cruel thing we've done is also because of God. She created that cruel act. And again, this doesn't get us off the hook. It's just admitting the source. We live in an evolutionary world. And in an evolutionary world, different levels of evolution will manifest out of our being. Now, as a conscious being, we actively choose to allow the higher levels of manifestation to come forward. And going back to the last question about eating meat, being a vegan, all this silliness. It can be silliness if it's just a trend and we do it. It's a trendy thing to be a vegan now. But the reason I don't eat meat is because the energy and intelligence of my heart tells me, don't do that. And I don't even think about it anymore. I don't even see animals as food. See, that's the vision of my heart. Now, there's some days you want to eat food which isn't so wholesome. Now, like I said, when I'm eating even organic chocolate, fair trade candy bar, it's not the most wholesome thing. I don't need it for anything. It doesn't really provide anything for me or for this world. Occasionally on a road trip, I'll stop and get some French fries somewhere. Is that the highest manifestation of my heart? No. It's a manifestation of hunger. Just animal-like hunger. My body has a craving. So sometimes I allow that to come forward and lead me. Sometimes I go shopping. I like to buy a new pair of pants or new clothes or try on clothes. Is it the highest part of my nature coming forward? No, it's just a different level of evolution. Sometimes, when I'm driving down the road, someone cuts me off, a feeling of anger arises within me. Where did that anger come from? It came from my conditioning. It came from my humanity. Where did my conditioning and my humanity come from? It came from God. She created it. She created this evolutionary world. She created this moment in time. She created Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, and Ben Carson and John Kasich and the rest of them. And for those of you in other countries, those are the candidates for the next president of the United States. And so there's different levels of evolution within us. When you judge those levels of evolution, it's almost like you're fighting with yourself. Or rather, you're fighting with different layers of evolution which are arising within yourself. Judgment oftentimes is a way we're trying to protect ourselves from something. So I'd encourage you to look at that, like, what are you trying to protect yourself from? Sometimes if we regret what we've done in the past, we think we need to judge ourselves harshly so we don't repeat the past. And that's great if that works for you. But a different way of doing that is just committing yourself to the goodness of your heart. And saying, okay, I regret the fact that once upon a time I was an alcoholic. And so instead of beating myself up for being an alcoholic, I'm choosing to allow my heart to lead me, the goodness lead me, my innocence lead me, my love lead me, and show the way. Show me the way. See, that's a different way of being. That's a different way of living. And so anyways, I'm realizing I'm running out of time here, but the big thing is can you forgive yourself for the past, for being a jerk? I look back at my life and say, I've been a real jerk throughout my life. A lot of the things that my ex-wife said about me are true. A lot of things I did were unwholesome. A lot of things I did were wrong. Can we admit that and then forgive ourselves? It's easier to forgive yourself when you know that God created all these movements within us. God created all of our thoughts. God gave us lust. God gave us anger. God gave us aggression. God gave us that need that we have. I need to be right all the time, whatever people have. That kind of takes the edge off when we blame God. Now, of course, it's our responsibility when we are conscious of what comes out of our mouth, what actions we do. Just from a place of wisdom, if we look back at our life, it serves us, it doesn't serve us at all to judge ourselves, to blame ourselves, to attack ourselves, to fight with ourselves. Can we just admit the sorrow that's in our heart? We did those things in the past. Grieve them fully. Admit that, that was a painful thing that we did. And then bring forth a sense of forgiveness, which will invite us back into the present moment. Come back into the present moment and feel the goodness and innocence of your heart. And just commit to allowing the goodness and the innocence of your heart to lead you, to guide you on your way. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. I want to thank you all for joining me this evening, especially those of you from Australia, a number of individuals from Australia, California, Florida, Chicago, Albuquerque, Santa Fe. Where else? In New York City. In Canada, a lot of Canadians. So I thank you all for coming tonight. It's been my absolute pleasure to meet with you. Until next time, may peace be with you.